So let's add a default button which we can use. And that will be another base component. So I will add it to the UI folder and I'll name the file name base_button.view. Now in there, of course, we'll have a template. And there I'll have my button element, the default button element. But now it's all about having some default styling for the button. So for that, I'll add my style tag here. And of course, scope it. And I'm providing some default styling you can take attached to this lecture in the button.css file. I'm fully aware that this is probably not the styling you came up with, but you can now use it. This sets up a general button style, also when it's hovered or active. But then I also have a CSS class which we can add conditionally to give it an alternative look, so that we can actually have one base button component which can be configured to look differently. And it should be configurable with props. So for that, I'll also add a script tag here and add the props option. And the props I want to accept here is, let's say, the type prop, so that we can set the type of the button and bind the default type attribute to this type prop. But I'll also accept the mode prop, which I want to set as a CSS class here. So I'll bind the class attribute to this mode prop value. And my idea is that you can then use this base button with a mode of flat later in another component, of course. And if you do so, this flat text here will be added as a CSS class. And we do have a selector for this class, giving this button an alternative look. And of course, we could add more classes to support more alternative looks. Now that's almost it, but one important thing is missing. And that's another slot. Because of course, the content inside of the button, the text for example, should be passed in from outside. We could also accept another prop for that, for example a caption prop, and use that. But by using a slot, we give the user, the developer using our button, a bit more flexibility. Because now you can not just feed in text, but you could also pass in an icon, a SVG icon, or any markup of your choice. Now that's the base button. Just like the base card, I'm going to register it globally so that we can use it anywhere in this application. So in main.js, I'm importing it from components, UI, base_button.view. And I will register it with the component method here. Base-button points at this imported base button, like this. And now that we got this base button set up, we can go back to the learning resource where I'm using a button and replace that default button with the base button. And if we do that, we should see our new button here. Now that's the default look, and I like that look in many places, but not here. Here I want to use that alternative look, and we can achieve this by adding the mode prop and setting it to flat, which in this case is the only supported mode, of course, except for the default look. But with that, we now have this flat look. This hopefully also gives you an idea of what you can do with components. We now are building a button which can easily be configured through some props, through some attributes, you could say. And we don't need to write complex styling here. Instead, the styling is all inside of the button, and whoever then uses our button in code just needs to set these props. If you're working on a bigger project in a bigger team, writing components like this, of course, is super powerful because just one person needs to create the component and the styling, and then the entire team can use it and configure it through props, so through attributes in the end. That's also why I'm showing you something like this in this course, because you need to be able to do things like that, and you should be aware of patterns and approaches like that. Well, and that's our button. That is the next component added. And with that, we spent enough time on visual components. Let's come back to adding some logic. At the moment, we have a list of resources, but we're still working on all the dummy resources we started with. So as a next step, let's make sure we allow the user to go to a add resource form where data like this can be entered into form inputs, and where then ultimately a new resource can be added by the user of our web application to this array.